Humanitarian and development initiatives. France supports development programs in conflict zones to address the root causes of terrorism, such as poverty and lack of education. It also provides humanitarian aid to regions affected by terrorism. Stay connected with us till the end for complete information. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell button to receive more informative videos.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to dive deep into something pretty intense.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. France's counterterrorism strategy, how they're tackling terrorism on a global scale.
Sounds complicated.
It is, kind of, but fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got some excerpts here from the French Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs website, and let me tell you, they're serious about this stuff.
I bet.
They even have a goal, get this, of taking down online terrorist content, like within an hour of it being flagged.
Wow, 1 hour. That's pretty impressive. Shows how much they're prioritizing this, especially, with how much stuff is online these days.
Exactly. It's not just about speed, though. Their whole approach it's really layered. I mean, they've got these 4 main objectives that really kind of drive their counterterrorism efforts.
Okay, so like a framework.
Yeah, like a framework. So first up, weakening terrorist groups directly.
Makes sense. So hitting their, operational capacity.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not just about military force. They're also trying to dismantle all those networks that these groups rely on.
Oh, right, like the support systems.
Yeah, finances, recruitment, logistics, even their propaganda, they're trying to cut off all the lifelines.
Interesting. So starve the beast, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. And then objective number 2 is preventing radicalization, so stopping people from getting drawn into these ideologies in the first place.
Right. I mean, that's got to be key, right? Stop it before it even starts.
Exactly. But that's where it gets tricky, right? How do you counter these extremist narratives without, stepping on free speech?
Yeah, the big question. It's a tough balance.
It really is. France is actually working with a lot of its partners, trying to figure out the best strategies and share best practices.
Smart. So they're not trying to go it alone.
Nope. And speaking of partners, objective number 3 is all about protecting French interests and citizens abroad.
Okay, so that makes sense. Can't exactly combat terrorism if you're not also protecting your own people.
Exactly. And this one's a two-way street. It's about protecting France, yeah, but it's also about contributing to the global fight.
Right, because it's a global issue.
Exactly. Which brings us to, you guessed it, objective number 4.
Enhancing international cooperation.
Bingo. France knows they can't do this alone.
Yeah, makes sense. So, with that 1 hour takedown goal for online terrorist content, what are they actually doing to achieve that?
Well, they're working directly with tech companies to streamline the process of taking down that content. But it's not just about hitting delete,
Right, what else?
They're also engaging in all these high-level dialogues with other countries, trying to figure out, okay, how do we counter this messaging? How do we prevent online radicalization?
So a lot of collaboration, but I imagine it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, right? Those groups are always adapting.
Oh, absolutely. Finding new platforms, new tactics, and countries like France are constantly trying to stay one step ahead.
So it's not just about taking down content, it's about what you replace it with, right?
Exactly. Promoting alternative narratives, amplifying the voices of moderation, giving people resources to resist these extremist ideologies. It's a whole different approach.
Interesting. Because just censoring everything, that doesn't really solve the problem, does it? Might even push those ideas further underground.
Exactly. It's about creating a space for dialogue where different perspectives can be shared and these extremist views are challenged openly.
Right, so you're not just silencing them, you're actually addressing the ideas.
Yeah. Now, what about foreign terrorist fighters? They seem particularly tricky.
Oh, definitely. Crossing borders, joining these groups, and then potentially coming back radicalized.
And dangerous?
Yeah, it's a huge concern. France has been really active in organizations like the UN and the Global Counter-terrorism Forum, working on strategies to track, monitor, and apprehend these individuals.
So international cooperation again?
Absolutely. It's about sharing intelligence, collaborating on border security, trying to limit the flow of these fighters.
It sounds like a huge undertaking.
It is, but it's definitely having an impact. We've seen successes with intelligence sharing, joint operations, disrupting terrorist plots, even capturing key figures.
That's good to hear.
But the threat is always evolving, right? New challenges pop up all the time, like the use of encrypted communication.
It's a never-ending battle.
It really is, but France is committed to fighting on all fronts. One area they've taken a real lead in is the fight against terrorist financing. You remember those no money for terror conferences President Macron started back in 2018 and 2019?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember those. But did those actually lead to any concrete action?
Definitely. One big outcome was the Paris Agenda, this global roadmap for disrupting terrorist financing.
So So like a plan of attack.
Exactly. It outlines steps countries can take to cut off the money to these organizations.
So it's more than just talk, there's actual action involved.
Oh, for sure. We even saw a UN Security Council resolution passed focused on criminalizing terrorist financing, strengthening international cooperation.
Wow, so they're really hitting them where it hurts, huh?
It's definitely a key part of the strategy. And France has been pushing hard for this resolution, working with groups like the Financial Action Task Force, encouraging countries to beef up their own laws.
So like a multi-pronged approach there, too.
Exactly. But let's be honest, sometimes you can't avoid direct action. And that's where France's military operations come in.
Right, because sometimes talking isn't enough.
It's important to understand how they use military force, though. They're not just deploying troops randomly. They're targeting very specific terrorist strongholds.
Smart. Makes more sense than trying to fight everywhere at once.
Exactly. Places where these groups train, plan attacks, operate freely.
Okay, so where are some of these key theaters of operation?
Well, the source highlights two main areas, the Sahel region and Syria and Iraq.
Oh, right. Those have been in the news a lot.
In the Sahel, France has been active for over a decade. Their current mission, Operation Barkhane, is all about supporting the G5 Sahel countries.
Remind me, who's that again?
That's Mauritania, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad. They're helping them fight terrorism, strengthen their own security.
Gotcha. So it's more of a partnership, working with local forces?
Right, exactly. It's not just military action either. They're involved in development governance programs too, trying to address the root causes of instability.
Right, because instability can breed extremism.
It's a long game, for sure.
And what about Syria and Iraq? What's France's role there?
They're part of the global coalition against Daesh. Their Operation Shamal involves airstrikes, supporting ground forces, working to stabilize areas after they're liberated.
So again, very much an international effort.
Yeah, definitely. But it makes you wonder, is military action really effective on the long run? Can you bomb your way to peace?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is. France believes military force is necessary to contain the immediate threat, but they also get that it's just one piece of a bigger puzzle.
Right, like a tool in the toolbox.
That's why they're also so invested in things like stabilization, reconstruction, and finding political solutions to these conflicts.
Makes sense. So it's not just about winning battles, it's about winning the peace, too.
Exactly, and that's where things get even more complicated because building peace requires a whole different set of tools and approaches.
Okay, so we've talked about France's objectives, their international efforts, cutting off funding, military operations. What strikes me is how connected all of these things are.
Right, like it's not just a bunch of separate things they're doing, it's all woken together.
Yeah, it's like a comprehensive strategy, you know?
You got it. And that's one of the things that makes France's approach so interesting. There's no silver bullet when it comes to counterterrorism. It takes this multifaceted, adaptable strategy.
It's like they're playing 3D chess, you know, thinking several moves ahead, trying to anticipate what the other side will do and figure out countermeasures before the threat even materializes.
And this fight doesn't stop at France's borders either, right? What about the EU? What's their role in all this?
That's a great question and something we're going to dig into right after this.
France has really been pushing to, strengthen the EU's counterterrorism capabilities.
Yeah, I can see that.
They were really big on pushing for that European passenger name record system.
Oh, right. That helps track air travel.
Exactly. And they were key in setting up the EU Internet Forum,
Which is focused on...
combating online extremism.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Trying to get everyone on the same page.
Right. And they've also been pushing to, beef up Europol's European Counterterrorism Center.
So basically using the whole EU as like a force multiplier, right?
Yeah, exactly. Share information, coordinate policies, pool resources.
Makes a lot of sense. It's a huge task, though, right? I mean, we've talked about their own strategies, international partnerships, stopping the money flow, military operations.
That's a lot, yeah.
And what's striking to me is how France manages to, integrate all these elements. It's not just separate things. It's all connected.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's one of the things that makes their approach so fascinating. They recognize there's no one solution to terrorism.
Right. It's got to be this multifaceted thing.
Exactly. And it has to be able to adapt because the threat's always changing.
Like that machine analogy we used earlier, all these moving parts working together.
I like that. And it really speaks to just how complex this challenge is. You can't just have one simple answer. It takes a coordinated, adaptable strategy.
And it seems like France really gets that. They're really stepping up on the global stage here.
Absolutely. And their efforts really underscore how important international cooperation is. Sharing information, addressing the root causes. You can't do it all alone.
So it's not just about reacting to an attack after it happens.
It's about tackling the root of the problem, preventing future attacks.
Okay, so that brings up a really crucial question, though, and I'm curious to get your take on this. How do we balance this need for security with protecting individual freedom?
Yeah, big question, especially with these terrorist networks. They're global. Their tactics are always changing.
It's a tricky balance, for sure.
It is. Democracies all over the world are wrestling with this. How much security is enough? When does it start to infringe on our liberties?
Yeah, because you don't want to create a solution that ends up undermining the very things you're trying to protect.
Right. It's this constant process of evaluation, debate, adjustment, trying to find that sweet spot where security and freedom can coexist.
So it sounds like there's no easy answer here.
Nope. But it's something we have to keep talking about, keep working towards solutions that are both effective and ethical.
Solutions that actually dismantle those networks without, dismantling our open societies in the process.
Exactly. And that takes dialogue, transparency, and a real commitment to upholding democratic principles, even when it's hard, even when we're scared.
It sounds like France is at least taking that responsibility pretty seriously.
They are. They're not just throwing everything they've got at a problem and hoping for the best. They're strategically engaging with partners. They're investing in those long-term solutions. They're thinking about the consequences of their actions.
So they're thinking several moves ahead, like in that chess analogy we talked about.
Exactly. They're not just reacting to the immediate threat. They're working to build a more resilient, secure world for the long run.
That's a good way to put it. So this fight against terrorism, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
You got it. It takes stamina, it takes strategic thinking, and it takes a willingness to constantly adapt and evolve.
And it's a marathon that we're all running together. No one country can win this alone.
I love that. It takes international collaboration, a shared understanding of the threat, and a commitment to finding solutions that work for everyone.
So it's about building this global network of resilience, where countries support each other, share information, work together to take down those networks and address those root causes.
That's a powerful image. Nations united against terrorism, not just through force, but through cooperation, understanding, a shared vision of a more peaceful world.
So we've covered a lot today. France's strategies, their international partnerships, their efforts to dismantle these networks, prevent radicalization, stabilize conflict zones.
What's clear is that they're tackling this challenge with a level of sophistication, determination, long-term thinking. It's honestly kind of inspiring.
And they're not just fighting terrorism, they're working to build a more resilient and secure world for all of us.
And that's a goal we can all get behind. But, we've only just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to explore about global counterterrorism.
And that's what's great about these deep dives. They get you thinking.
Totally. It's not just about absorbing information. It's about sparking curiosity, getting you to think critically, helping you engage with these really complex issues.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up, is there one key thought you want our listeners to kind of chew on?
I think it comes back to something we've touched on a few times today, that delicate balance between security and freedom.
It's a tough one.
It is, and it's a balance that democracies everywhere are struggling with.
And there's no easy answer.
No, there isn't. But it's something we have to keep talking about, keep debating, keep searching for solutions.
Solutions that are both effective in stopping terrorism and that don't erode the very freedoms we're trying to protect.
Exactly. And that's where you, the listener, come in. We need informed citizens who understand the complexities, who can challenge those easy answers that we hear so often.
So educate yourself, have those tough conversations, don't be afraid to question things.
And don't underestimate the power of individual action. Support organizations that are doing good work, promote tolerance in your own community. Those things make a difference.
It's about building a culture that rejects violence, that embraces peace, understanding, respect for diversity.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Those are the foundations of a truly secure and resilient world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into France's counterterrorism efforts, what's the biggest takeaway you want our listeners to ponder?
I'd say it's this. The fight against terrorism, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It takes long-term vision, it takes collaboration, and it takes a willingness to adapt.
And it's a fight that demands our attention, our participation, as individuals, as a global community.
We all have a role to play in building a more peaceful and secure world.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into France's international action against terrorism. Hopefully you've gotten a better sense of just how complex this issue is and the strategies involved in tackling it.
We hope it sparks some curiosity and some critical thinking and a desire to engage with these issues, in a meaningful way.
Yeah, because ultimately this fight against terrorism, it's a fight for the values we all hold dear. Freedom, justice, equality, peace.
And it's a fight we can only win together.
So until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for that world where security and freedom can coexist, where we celebrate diversity, and where peace wins out. It's amazing how France's approach to this It's not just about, like, military stuff or intelligence.
Yeah, they really get it, don't they?
Like, true security, it comes with something way bigger.
Right, exactly.
They're putting money into development, promoting good governance,
Trying to build up societies that are less likely to fall into those traps that lead to radicalization.
Yeah, it's a longer-term strategy for sure.
But I think it could really pay off in the end.
And it goes back to what we were talking about before, that whole international collaboration thing.
Oh, absolutely. No one country can handle this alone. It's got to be a team effort, global.
So looking back at everything we've talked about, what would you say is France's most effective tactic?
Oh, that's tough. I think their commitment to this multifaceted approach, that's key.
Yeah, they're not just betting on one thing.
They're combining so much military action, intelligence sharing, cutting off the money, fighting propaganda, tackling the root causes,
It's like a full-court press.
Right, and that adaptability that's crucial when you're up against an enemy that's constantly changing.
But, with all this focus on security, how do they make sure they're not, like, stepping on people's freedoms?
That's the balancing act, right? Security versus democratic values.
Yeah.
It's a constant discussion. And France, like a lot of democracies, they're wrestling with it.
There's no easy answer, is there?
Not really. But it's good that they're thinking about it, trying to be mindful.
Yeah, it's something all of us have to think about.
Absolutely. It affects everyone. As individuals, we have a role to play too.
Okay, so what can we do?
Start by being informed. Understand how complicated this issue is, and don't buy into those oversimplified narratives.
Be a critical thinker, right?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to have those difficult conversations, even when it's uncomfortable.
And I guess even those small actions, they can add up, right?
Totally. Supporting organizations doing good work, promoting tolerance in your own community, all of that contributes.
Building a culture that says no to violence, that says yes to peace, understanding,
Respect for each other, even when we're different.
Yeah, that's the foundation, isn't it, for a world that's both secure and resilient.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into France's counterterrorism efforts, what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
Good question.
I think it's this. The fight against terrorism, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It takes long-term thinking, it takes working together, and it takes being willing to change, to adapt.
And it takes all of us, right?
Exactly. We all have a part to play in building a more peaceful, secure world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into France's international action against terrorism. We hope you have a better understanding now of the challenges involved and the strategies they're using.
Yeah, and hopefully we've gotten you thinking a bit more deeply about it all.
And maybe even inspired you to get involved in some way.
Because this fight, it's really a fight for the things we all believe in. Freedom, justice, equality, peace.
And those are things worth fighting for. So until next time, keep learning, keep asking those tough questions, and keep working towards that world where security and freedom can exist together, where we celebrate our differences, and where peace wins out.